These are the biggest accidents
Championship protagonists have taken each other.
This was a big one.
and a big fire there that changed Formula One forever. There's a chilling phrase in motorsport, he died to save others, but is that really true? To find out, we start with Zhou Guanyu. In Formula One, 27 seconds is all it takes to die. The British Grand Prix. And those soft tyres. Oh, we got several cars over when Zhou Guanyu's Alfa Romeo flew into the fence at nearly 300 kilometers per hour. The world stopped for a moment.
My God.
It looked like he had been buried alive. Everyone held their breath. George Russell, who had jumped out of his own car, sprinted toward the wreckage. No one had seen Zhou. No one knew if he was okay. Then the news came. He was conscious. We are told driver is okay, just informed.
All driver is okay, just informed the message from race control. So Joe is okay.
The message from race control, Zhou is okay, and somehow completely unharmed. The reason? Halo. Without it, Zhou's head would have taken the full force of both collisions. Formula One wasn't always like this. It took more than one tragedy to get to this point. And the first happened in Formula 2. Just 18 years old, racing at Brands Hatch, where legends once battled.
And it's and a huge off, that's Jack Clark.
But that summer day, everything changed. 24 Tom Gladys, and a huge off Jack Clark. Jack Clark spun out. His car slammed into the barriers.
The nose of Henry Surtees' car.
Routine stuff for a Formula 2 race, but what happened next was anything but routine. A loose wheel flying at over 140 kilometers per hour bounced across the track and hit Henry Surtees square on the helmet. And I think the wheel caught Henry Surtees on the helmet, and that has got to be a very major worry. He was unconscious instantly. By the time marshals reached him, it was already too late. He was airlifted to the Royal London Hospital. Hours later, the motorsport world lost one of its brightest young stars. But this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call. Henry's death exposed a brutal truth about open-wheel racing. Drivers' heads were still dangerously vulnerable. This accident reignited the debate over cockpit protection. Henry's father, John Surtees, a former world champion himself, became the leading voice demanding change. He founded the Henry Surtees Foundation, dedicated to improving safety and supporting drivers with traumatic brain injuries. His efforts paid off. By 2011, Formula One had doubled the number of wheel tethers to prevent such tragedies. But behind the scenes, engineers were already working on something even more crucial: head protection systems. And just as progress was being made, something terrible happened. 2014, Japan. The Suzuka Grand Prix was held under the shadow of a typhoon. On lap 42, everything began to unravel. Adrian Sutil spun out at the Dunlop corner and crashed into the barriers. The incident seemed insignificant, but no tow truck came to the track, no safety car, no red flag, and one lap later the worst happened. Oh my God! This wasn't a typical crash. This was something else. He was unconscious by the time they pulled him out. The impact? 254 Gs, the kind of number no human body is built to survive. The helmet had done all it could, but it wasn't enough. He was rushed to Mie Prefectural Hospital. Brain trauma, emergency surgery, a medically induced coma, and then the news no one wanted to hear. French Formula One driver Jules Bianchi has died of injuries suffered during last year's Japanese Grand Prix. Jules Bianchi had passed away, the first driver to die from a race incident in Formula One since Ayrton Senna in 1994. The crash shattered the paddock. No champagne was popped, no celebration, just shock and regret. Because it was avoidable. Why was a crane on a live track? Why wasn't the safety car deployed? The accidents of Henry and Jules gave impetus to change. It couldn't happen again. Okay, this is Formula One.
We think.
God, what is this tractor?
Years later, God, I'm going to be with God. What is this tractor? We lost Jules already, for the reasons that we know, 8 years ago, on the same track, in the same conditions, with a crane. How? Let's go back to 2014. The Yankees' death was the last push Formula One needed, and it led to the biggest safety innovation in modern racing, halo. Strangely at first, all the drivers were negative about the changes. Max Verstappen was quoted, "I think as soon as I have that thing on my car, I don't like it. And I'm not even sitting in the car, so, the excitement is already gone before I'm even sitting in the car." However, in 2020, during the Bahrain Grand Prix, everything changed. Just another race on the calendar. No rain, no chaos. It's lights out, and away we go. Romain Grosjean made a sharp move across the track, directly into Daniel Kvyat's AlphaTauri.
Already and that is that damage for Lando Norris. That's certainly damage. And
Already. That damage for Lando Norris, that's certainly damage, and a big fire there. His car split in half. What the fuck was that? For 27 seconds, there was no word, no movement. We watched in horror. Was this it? And then, out of the flames, every piece of safety innovation from the past 2 decades did its job.
I wanted to say I'm okay, sort of okay. Thank you very much for all the messages.
Grosjean's crash proved one thing beyond doubt. The halo could save a driver, even when engulfed in flames. Just wanted to say I'm okay. Sort of okay. Thank you very much for the messages. Grosjean would never race in Formula One again, but he left with something far greater, his life. But Jules' accident affected not only F1, but also his godson, Charles Leclerc, who in 2019 had a chance to win the race at the Belgian Grand Prix and dedicate it to him.
can't stop, and he has gone straight on into Brendan Hartley.
But as soon as Charles won the pole position, something unexpected happened. Oh, there's a big crash there. There's a car who lost it. Oh, that's a horrible accident. Holy jeez. Oh wow, that is a horrible accident. Geez, I hope that kid's okay. Trident's Giuliano Alesi lost control through the flat-out corner. He spun, smashed into the barrier, and bounced back onto the track. Antoine Hubert veered to the right to avoid the wreckage, but in that split-second moment, he struck debris and hit the barriers at nearly 200 kilometers an hour. But what came next was worse. Juan Manuel Correa, unsighted and at full speed, collided directly with Hubert's side pod. The G-forces from the second hit were measured at over 70 G. Hubert was rushed to the medical centre, but his injuries were beyond recovery. At 18:35 local time, the FIA announced the unthinkable. A French racing driver, Antoine Hubert, has been killed in a Formula 2 crash at the Belgian Grand Prix. The motorsport world was in mourning, but among the grief stood one man, his face set like stone, Charles Leclerc, Hubert's childhood friend, his teammate in karting.
Okay, copy that. We are checking it.
There's some frictions with the engine.
Charles was the only one left to chase that dream, as the lights went out in Spa, and it's lights out, and away we go. Grabbed signs on the grid, and when the checkered flag waved, wins a Formula One Grand Prix. More than that, he had carried his best friend to the top with him. It was good, but difficult to enjoy on a weekend like this. But as the paddock mourned one young life lost, it couldn't ignore the echoes of another dark chapter, because motorsport had seen weekends like this before, and in 1994, it saw its darkest.
Michael Schumacher now, and Senna! My goodness, I just saw him plunge off to the right.
The race weekend in San Marino began like any other. Ayrton Senna was the favourite of the season, but heading into Imola, he was already trailing the rising star, Michael Schumacher. Senna was supposed to win in qualifying, but Rubens Barrichello suddenly crashed. For a moment, it looked fatal. Luckily, Rubens survived with only fractures and a concussion. But no sooner had he recovered from the first accident, another happened. It was Roland Ratzenberger, in just his second Grand Prix weekend, fighting for a spot on the grid. Moments earlier, he had run wide and damaged his front wing. Then, at over 300 kilometers per hour, it failed. Roland Ratzenberger succumbed to injuries sustained in the accident which took place at Imola circuit during Saturday qualifying practice, April the 30th. It was the first death in Formula One in 12 years.
Roland Ratzenberger succumbed to injuries sustained in the accident which took place at Imola circuit during Saturday qualifying practice, April the 30th.
No one in the paddock could believe it, but it hit Senna the hardest. He had seen everything, but even he didn't know that the worst was yet to come. Sunday, race day. When the lights went out, it happened again.
And Senna boils away. Schumacher second, Berger third, Damon Hill, and that's a Lotus.
Safety car. Senna continued to lead. But it was not like that. Cold tyres, low ground clearance, a car he didn't trust. Lap 7, at 233 km/h, the Williams car crashed into a concrete wall. At first, it seemed that there was hope. He moved. But when the medics got to him, it became clear that the situation was critical. At the moment of impact, the front right wheel came off, along with a part of the suspension, and pierced the helmet visor. The force of the collision threw his head to the other side, causing serious skull fractures. Senna was pronounced dead at the hospital. Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton Senna, 3 times world motor racing champion, has died after crashing during the San Marino Grand Prix.
3 times world motor racing champion has died after crashing during the San Marino Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna was more than a champion. He was a symbol. But what happened next was not silence. It changed everything. The FIA sprang into action. In the months that followed, cockpits were redesigned. Tracks were reprofiled, medical protocols were overhauled, helmets were reinforced, and eventually the hand system was introduced. So, the lessons learned from Senna would mean everything for Felipe Massa. In qualifying, Massa was pushing hard. Then suddenly, without warning, even after the crash, his engine was still revving. He wasn't moving. The slow-motion replay revealed the shocking cause. A tiny spring had flown off Rubens Barrichello's car just seconds earlier. It bounced down the track and, at over 160 miles per hour, it struck Massa directly on the helmet. Massa was airlifted to a hospital in critical condition. Skull fractures, concussion. He was unconscious, bleeding, and doctors feared the worst. He survived, but he missed the rest of the 2009 season. And though he came back to racing in 2010, many believed that Felipe Massa was never the same again. But this crash changed more than just his career. The spring that struck Massa exposed a deadly flaw: the visor gap in F1 helmets. It was the same vulnerability that cost Ayrton Senna his life 15 years earlier. After Senna's death, the FIA began redesigning helmets to withstand debris impact. And on that day in Budapest, that progress paid off. This helmet was a carbon helmet, and maybe 3 years before, it would have been completely different. Safety caught up just in time for some. But there was a time when it couldn't. And one driver raced like it never would. Zolder, Belgian Grand Prix qualifying. Ferrari was at war with itself. The team dynamic had collapsed after Villeneuve's teammate, Didier Pironi, had disobeyed team orders to steal a win at Imola just 2 weeks earlier. Gilles Villeneuve was furious. He vowed to never speak to Pironi ever again. At Zolder, he had one goal: to out-qualify Didier. Coming over the rise before the Butte corner, Villeneuve was closing rapidly on the march of Jochen Mass, who moved right to let him through. But at that exact moment, Villeneuve darted right too. The car somersaulted through the air at over 200 kilometers per hour, disintegrating into a cloud of debris. Villeneuve was thrown from the car, his body flying through the air, helmet torn off by the violence of the crash. He landed more than 50 meters from the wreck. The session was red flagged. The paddock went silent. The doctors rushed him to the hospital, but the injuries were catastrophic. That evening, he was declared brain dead. Life support was turned off at 9:12 p.m. Villeneuve's death was not just another victim, it changed the sport forever, and especially Enzo Ferrari. My life is full of sad memories. I look back and I see my loved ones, and among my loved ones, I see the face of this great man. They didn't just have a relationship, they were like a family. But this nightmare season wasn't done giving out tragedies. Just 31 days after Villeneuve lost his life at Zolder, Formula One witnessed yet another tragedy. Canadian Grand Prix, Montreal, June 13, 1982. Riccardo Paletti was just 23 years old, a promising young Italian talent, making only his second Grand Prix start. It should have been the beginning of a bright career, but it would be the end. As the 5 red lights came on at the circuit Ile Notre Dame, the grid prepared for launch. But on pole position, Didier Pironi, driving Villeneuve's Ferrari, stalled getting away. And there's all sorts of trouble on the bridge. Cars all around veered to avoid the stalled Ferrari. But Paletti, approaching at over 180 kilometers per hour, slammed straight into the back of Didier's car. The impact was devastating. Flames erupted from the wreckage. And the car's on fire. The car has burst into flames. Of course, it's absolutely full of fuel. Rescue teams rushed in. Miraculously, Pironi escaped injury, but Paletti was pinned inside the car, unconscious, as the flames raged around him. It took several minutes to put out the fire and cut him free, but by the time they reached him, it was too late. It was his first start in Formula One. And his last. After Paletti's crash, F1 introduced more stringent fuel cell regulations, better cockpit integrity standards, and reforms in fire safety protocols. September 10, 1961. Wolfgang von Trips was Ferrari's golden boy, locked in a title battle with his young American teammate, Phil Hill. He just needed a clean race to stay in the lead. 14 spectators were killed. Von Trips died instantly. It was the deadliest crash in Formula One history, not just for the paddock, but also for the fans. A horrifying reminder that back then, even watching F1 could cost you your life. Phil Hill won the race and clinched the title that day. Hill would later say he wished he hadn't won like this. This tragedy would permanently change how the sport viewed crowd safety and fencing. It wasn't just about protecting the drivers anymore. It was about protecting everyone.